Hello everyone, my name is Andrew Simpson and I'm the Lucky Sporran Tour Guide. Welcome to this, my first YouTube channel video guiding you around the village of North Queensferry in Scotland. As you know, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, it's not easy for anyone to travel around, so I'm going to try and bring you some short videos about the village I live in and some of the landmarks that are around it. It's an absolutely stunning day here today. It's the 1st of May and the sky is blue and the sun is out. It could not be looking better. So welcome to my YouTube channel and welcome to this, my first video. So the village of North Queensferry is on the north side of the River Forth, and the River Forth is a tidal estuary that runs out and eventually meets the North Sea. Now, there's been a settlement here, which you can see behind me. We're in the harbour area here, and you can see some houses behind me. And there has been a settlement here for over 1,000 years, but it really came to prominence in the late 1000s when Queen Margaret, who later became St Margaret, created a ferry crossing here for pilgrims who were on their way to St Andrews. So this is the shortest point, distance in the river for there to be a ferry crossing, which is why this area was chosen. Otherwise, you have a very long journey further west before you can get across the River Forth. So as I said, Queen Margaret established the crossing here in the late 1000s. And of course, she was a queen and it was a ferry crossing, so it became known as North and South Queen's Ferry. Quite obvious really when you think about it. So on the south side we have South Queensferry and I'm here on the north side in North Queensferry. Now of course that kind of set the precedent of a ferry crossing being here, but because it was the logical place for people to cross the river, then of course it really became an established point for crossings throughout history. Now, as time went on, obviously more and more people were crossing the river, and at the start of the 1800s, demand had grown to a point where you obviously had a much more industrialised ferry service. And the pier that I'm standing on now, which you can see behind me, and also in front of me, it's a huge long pier, was built in 1810 by the famous industrial engineer, civil engineer, John Rennie. John Rennie is responsible for building many piers and bridges and canals all over Scotland in this period. So the pier that I'm on, as I said, built in 1810 to establish a kind of formalised ferry crossing point between here and South Queensferry on what was previously kind of old rickety piers. It was extended again by Thomas Telford in the late 1800s due to increased size of ferry vessel, and that extension is really from where I'm standing now to the end of the pier, which you can see with a point behind me there, just behind my finger. So North Queensferry is a great place to visit if you enjoy looking at some civil engineering projects from from the 19th century. And of course, one of the biggest ones, which is kind of this huge thing behind me that you've probably been wondering why I'm not talking about yet, is the Forth Bridge. And what a stunning landmark it is for us to have in our village. So what's the story behind the Forth Bridge? Well, people could come to North Queensferry by train, but it did involve having to cross by ferry. So you'd get the train to the south side, then take a ferry across to the north side and join the railway on this side of the river. And obviously that was time consuming, and there was demand for travel for people travelling from London to the north up to Aberdeen. So a bridge was required. Now, as I said previously, this is the shortest distance between the land masses, so an obvious point to cross the River Forth. And it also has an island, Inchgarvie, in the middle, which you can see just, I'm pointing to it now, well, I'm trying to point to it now, that area there. So it had a natural point to put one of the piers for the bridge in. So initially it was designed by a man called Thomas Bouch, who designed the Tay Bridge, but unfortunately the Tay Bridge collapsed in 1879, and they were concerned that obviously his design might not be quite as safe as they thought, so his plans were put on hold and new designers, Benjamin Baker and John Fowler, were brought in to design the bridge that we see here. But if you look very closely, you can probably just see under the middle tower, there's a small white lighthouse. I don't know if you'll be able to pick it up in the film, but it was the original point of the foundation for the Thomas Bouch Bridge, which, as I said, didn't actually get built, but the foundations were laid. So the work on this bridge started in the late 1800s, around 1882, and it was opened in March of 1890. And when you look at it and just imagine the work that went into creating this in the late 1800s, it really is quite incredible. Over 4,000 people worked on it from all over the world at the peak of its construction. It was the first bridge of its kind to be built using steel, and at the time was the largest bridge of its type to be built using steel. It's really an amazing structure to look at, and someone's just come down the pier, but as I say, lots of people enjoy looking at it. It's an amazing structure to look at, and it was opened in March 1890 by the then Prince of Wales, who later became King Edward VII. It has over 6 million rivets in it, and it's said that on the day when it was opened, the train came to the middle of the bridge for the last rivet to be driven in, but it was so windy that they had to return to the shelter of the station in South Queensferry to actually do the formal announcement of the bridge being opened. One nice little story about the bridge that's very personal to me is that my papa was a pilot on the river. So my papa was my grandfather, a pilot on the river, as in not a flying pilot, but a pilot for guiding ships in and out of the various docks on the River Forth. This is a main shipping way as well. And they had a pilot station, which was just literally behind me on the little hill there. And that's where he was based. Now, tradition was that when you came across the bridge in the train, for good luck, you would throw some coins out of the train window into the water. But of course, if you threw them a little bit too late as you approached land, or a little bit too soon as you left land, then they would rain down on the people in the houses beneath. And he used to tell many stories of having to run in to take cover from pennies being thrown on them from above for good luck. So that's the end of this first video about North Queensferry, and I've told you all about the amazing Forth Bridge that you can see behind me. So next time, join me for some other sites of the village that I live in, and I hope you've enjoyed that brief video about North Queensferry and the Forth Bridge. Thanks for watching.